Hello, everyone. I'm Kristian Roberts, Director of Education of the Dallas Opera, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host,
Quo Johnson, Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera.
And we're here for another episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian
and Quo.
And today, we have some guests with us. We have two guests. It's the first time we've had two guests. I'm so excited. First of all, let me thank everybody for tuning in today. I want to introduce our first guest. Ladies first. I'm just going to say it. I'm a Southern girl. What can I say?
He's a gentleman.
First person I would like to introduce is Miss Kristian Haley.
Hello.
You can say hi. It's all good. All right.
Okay.
And so our second guest is Mr. Devlin DeCutler.
Hi, everyone.
And these two are very special to us. They're sort of a part of our Dallas Opera education family. They are teachers in DISD, educators, local educators. And so we wanted to do some checking in with them today. We'll get into more of their backgrounds in a minute. But, you know, as always, we want to do a recap of our last episode. So I'm going to turn it over to Quo for our recap.
All right. In our last episode, we had the honor and the pleasure of speaking with Morris about what it means to be represented in opera, what it means to be represented in the arts, and then the importance of ensuring that we create paths for others, as well as, you know, he spoke a lot about making sure that he was creating paths for younger generations to come in, and that we ensure that we are showing not only adults, but also students, people who look like them, people who do not look like them. So we always try to be mindful of the fact that with our roles in company culture and in education, that we're continuously folding in equity and we're continuously folding in education. We're continuously learning, right? We are ever learning, and that we're continuously sharing that knowledge and sharing what we learn with others. Hence our kind of segue into our educators moment for this episode.
Well, you know, when you do both. All right. So, and they do intertwine. So in this episode, what we wanted to talk about was, you know, people seeing people and looking at different communities and looking at the things that our teachers are now facing, our educators are now facing, our parents are now facing. And we wanted to talk to two people who are in the thick of it, have worked in DISD, people we work alongside a lot and who we've seen and talked to. I mean, Devlin and I have already had conversations. Kristian and I talk all the time. And we know these two people are very good at what they do. So we wanted to get them on here so they could talk a little bit about what they're doing. Because right now, there's obviously been a shift, all right? Everybody surprised by the shift? Okay. All right, let's all act surprised. Them two look really surprised. Those two look really surprised right now. And there has to been some quick thinking on the part of a lot of people, okay? Not just art companies, not just corporations, not just our regular businesses, but the schools, the children, teachers have had to shift. And they had to shift really quickly. Yeah. So we wanted to bring them on here to talk about some of the ways that they have been seeing things change, sort of what they have, how they've adapted to the change, what they see their peers doing to adapt to the change, and also just bring them in to give us some tips and just some insight. So I'll start with my first question, and Quo and I are going to be tossing questions back and forth, so just get ready for it. And both of you can answer these. But I wanted to just touch on, you know, what are some of the things that you're seeing that are common right now as an educator, particularly during COVID? Any one of you can take it. Kristian, you can go first. I see you chomping at the bit.
Well, with COVID, the biggest thing was that education had to go online and it had to be done from home. And so for the students, it depends on where the students were in their education abilities in campus. So if you're at a campus that's already one-to-one, that's already online majority or already have assignments online, then your shift was a little bit different because you were already ahead of the game with technology. Your kids already knew the resources and the platforms of the resources. So it's a little different. If you were a campus that did not, then you had to receive those resources and then had to be taught to use them, which kind of left you at a curve for a couple of weeks. because they didn't have the resources originally. Also, that came about is we had to realize that we're giving laptops and we're giving technology, but Wi-Fi is needed. And that was a lack in the school at homes when it came to students doing work online. They were checking attendance in certain ways. And if the kids couldn't be online, then of course education stopped until they got technology, and then till hotspots came. And then when the hotspots came, then how do you get them to, how many weeks have they been out? How do you get them back up and onto the computer? And how do you get them back into the routine of school? So those were some of the challenges when it came to the switch so quickly.
And Devlin, what about you? I mean, we talk about, I mean, all of us here have music backgrounds, obviously, but, you know, Kristian has been more on the, well, the general classroom, for lack of a better term. But, you know, we believe the arts should have equal footing. I'm going to put that out there right now. Did I say it? I said it.
You did.
You said it.
Snaps for myself.
Integrated.
I said integrated, arts integration. Okay,
Right.
are relative. I'm back. Devlin knows this because Devlin also sits on TDO's education committee. And Devlin is a fine arts teacher in the area. So Devlin, can you speak to this a little bit as well? Can you add anything to add to what Kristian has been saying, particularly from that perspective?
Definitely. I agree. Switching things online is something that no one was ready for, no one was expecting. And I think Dallas has done an incredible job with distributing devices, distributing hotspots, distributing food, right? I mean, you know, you can't learn if you are starving, right? I'm so proud of the way they've handled it. But even still, it's been really challenging for a lot of people. You know, parents are out of work or parents are watching their children. Students are having to work to support their families. And even under best case scenarios, you have parents who are full-time working, full-time caregivers, and full-time homeschool teachers all at the same time. And this is very, very real to me. I have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old. And then my 200 plus students. And so I think the biggest thing is you're seeing people balance this and deftly, flexibly, incredibly, but it's still a big challenge. And with that challenge comes some frustration. It comes some failure. It comes some struggling. And I think that a lot of people are dealing with not just the time challenges and the effort challenges, but the emotional challenges and the financial challenges. I think that it's a struggle for a lot of people to get through all of this. We're getting through it and we're finding ways, but it's a struggle. From a music standpoint, we've had to learn how to do music rehearsals in which we cannot be in the same place. And that's been an interesting shift.
Of that, I have no doubt. It's tough enough to do a rehearsal when you all have everybody together, you know, but doing it in a virtual space. So I would imagine that the response as an educator right now, how are you guys personally responding? Because you have to respond in different ways, but how have you, what are some things that you have put into place that you have personally responded through, and things that you have done in your own classrooms or in your own schools?
Well, for me, for the school I work at currently, we were a one-to-one campus that was online. So for us, we were even far ahead of the game because the students already worked online. All of their assignments, all of their tests were online, videos being used to supplement education and things of that nature only for recovery, not necessarily for initial. We have teachers teaching online live, doing dissections online, doing problems online, everything online. So the kids already kind of knew at that time. But when it came to the teachers, it came to be more when it came to social emotional learning about it. Because now we're not really talking about the student in an academic setting because we're not having them in the academic setting. So all of those things that they may usually leave at home when they come to school, now they're in it and at school. And so those factors become a much more bigger, I guess, challenge, because now you can't really, when you're in the classroom, you have a structure in your classroom, you have requirements in your classroom, you have procedures and routines in your classroom, so that once they come in, the room can run itself because everybody knows what they're supposed to do and things of that nature. But when they're at home, it becomes a distraction. Just like he said, if they're hungry, you know, we have to think about when kids are not showing up in Zoom classrooms, is something going on with their family? If we haven't seen them or talked to them for a few days, we need to call them or call their parents, make sure that they're okay, so that we can be just as aware of what's going on in the school. So I guess the biggest thing for me was to make sure I kept contact with my parents, make sure I kept contact with my students, make sure I check on them in class and make sure they show up. I have to go and pay attention to grades, making sure that they're doing well. And if I see a decline in a student that is like, oh, always so bright, then I'm going to call, because it's not becoming just a pass or fail, or it's not just becoming a percentage at that time, because you have to care for the whole child. So now we're having to bring a lot of social, emotional learning into it so that we can make sure that we're not putting more pressure on it at a time when a lot of people are unsure and the students are even more unsure. And at that age, did we really understand what was going on? Did we really understand how the world was working and what the world was doing? We didn't. So then now we have to think about how we're processing it and just think about how they're processing it. And so we have a lot of my teachers on campus when I go into their classrooms, because I'm in instructional support on my campus. When I go into the classroom to check on the kids and see about what's going on, even in the Zoom classrooms, the teachers are being very accountable about, let's talk about some current events.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's talk about, what do you think about this? You know, what do you think about what was said on the show? Did you watch it? Let's show a clip and let's have a conversation to try to give the kids some outlets for them to actually be able to use their voice and be able to actually voice how they feel. Because what if something really is going on at home? You really can't tell your mom, because it's like, what's more important at that time? But that their feelings matter, their voices matter, and you know, their understanding of this world as we're catching it too, right? We're catching it too. The adults are no better, that we're all getting this at the same time. So we have to process it for us, we have to process it for them, and then we have to process it in a way that they understand how this is not affecting you right now, but what this is going to be like for the future. Like where are we going to go from this? So those are just a couple of things.
Well, and Devlin, you and I talked a little bit beforehand, and Quo and I were discussing it earlier, but you know, we'd had a conversation about you and your students and the shift for them and sort of the loss of the social emotional circle that they had, right, you know, when they were at school, and that social structure. So as a person who teaches ensembles, and we know how we are as artists, okay, everybody in this room knows, Quo, you know, we talk about how it's such a special space.
Right.
You know, what do you do in terms of this? Because in an academic classroom, it's, you know, I'm not saying that it's easier by any means, but it would seem to be easier to do a math lesson or something like that. But here you are trying to conduct ensembles.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think that shifting to online learning is probably challenging for everyone, no matter how prepared you are if you're a one-to-one campus or not. And certainly a lot of people are experiencing challenges in different ways. I know for us, in any sort of ensemble, in a music class, in theater, in dance, in athletics, your participation directly affects the success of the people that you're with.
Yep.
I think that's probably true every class to some degree or another, but in something like music, if I sing my note wrong, the ensemble has made a mistake. Or if I'm not there, then the ensemble is missing a vital part. And doing that in this setting is very, very challenging. And we've managed to make it work. We've had some Zoom rehearsals, which that lag makes that very challenging. And so we've had to find workarounds that have been very successful, but it creates a lot more independence required from the students and a lot more dedication than it ever has before. And I'm so glad you talked about the social emotional learning, because I think as important, or if not more so, than the academic learning, than the skills and the knowledge we get from school, it's learning how to be a person. It's learning how to be a member of a community. And what we as adults, we may be aware of, but we may forget, is that students are fragile and that they are every bit as worried or nervous about stuff as we are, but they are lacking a lot of the coping skills.
Right.
And for many of them, the support structure, the community, the validation and the acceptance that they get from school is completely irreplaceable. And there is no substitute for that. And taking that away overnight, there's a loss, there's a grieving process, there's suffering that's happening from there. And I don't think that as adults, we've necessarily done a great job of realizing what our students have lost, especially the seniors, no prom, no graduation, no senior banquet, no trip. All of a sudden, everything's taken away. And even the juniors, now they're thinking, now what's college going to look like when I do get there? Right. So I think it's been a huge challenge, and the support structure that school provides is so important to them, and they're dealing with all of this without that. So we've attempted to provide that. I've been there with my students, and we've done YouTube videos and Zoom classes and Zoom rehearsals, and they've sent me assignments. More than anything, I just try to be available to talk with them, to help with them, and to show that someone is there to validate them, to help them feel accepted. We don't like to talk about it, but for some students, home is not a friendly place.
Yeah.
It's not a safe place, and it's not a comforting place. And school is a literal physical escape from that environment. And those students have now been in that environment this whole time. So if they seem a little unmotivated to do their classwork, if they seem a little bit distant in a virtual setting, if they seem a little hesitant or a little less dedicated, it may not be anything that's their fault. It may be some really, really challenging, really terrible things that they're dealing with. And we don't like talking about this, but I think that we need to, because it's a reality for our students. And so I think as teachers, we need to just put everything that we can to reach out and be there for our students, knowing that some will take us up on it, some can't take us up on it, but we will help them. Something that my students and I have done is compile resources for social needs, food banks, job finding resources, emotional support hotlines, health insurance, counseling, non-academic, non-school related resources, but real resources, life resources. And we've compiled them together and put them on our music website, so that people who maybe are a little hesitant to actually ask for help, or who don't know how to go about reaching out and asking for help, that they wouldn't have to do that on a one-on-one, person-to-person basis. They can find it on our website, they can get the resources there, and then they can act on those. And I've spoken with some students, and they said, yeah, my family was actually looking at that. Okay. So that's really great. I think that we are all whole people, and teachers will sometimes look at their students and see them as a chemist, see them as a writer, see them as a mathematician or a runner or a dancer or a singer. And what we have to remember is that they're all of those things all at the same time. And now they're not getting to choose who they are, when they are, and how they are. They're having it forced upon them. So I think we just need to let mercy and compassion be the words of the day as we're dealing with that.
Come on, Quo. I know you got something good to say. Come on. Because they've summed it. They've done a good job of summing this up. But I hear a lot. But go ahead, girl. I hear you.
Absolutely. Thank you both for sharing kind of your very real, your very personal insight in how you are showing up for our kids, showing up for the communities as well, and then showing up for education as a whole. In this, we wanted to make sure that we kind of combine that, because education is a part of what we do, especially in that equity work. And so, of course, kind of me being, that being my work, I see and I hear the lack of equity. But in that, like you said, I hear the lack of grace. I hear the lack of understanding that we're all kind of new to this, and that as we move through this, we'll have to do it together. And being mindful that our kids are suffering. Devlin, you mentioned that it's a matter of us kind of making sure that we remember that kids don't know what to do. I also agree that adults don't know what to do either.
Absolutely. I don't think that any of us has gone through this without mistakes. And I don't think any of us is 100% proud of everything that we've done throughout this process. It's new and different and scary for all of us. And we need to remember that as new and different and scary as it is for us, it's probably worse for our kids.
It's worse for the kids, because even the coping mechanisms that we've created for ourselves, whether they're healthy or not, kids don't really have those same options. Again, so many things are being dictated for them. So I always want to make sure that we give space in being mindful and seeing others, right? We see you, we hear you, and then ensuring that we go about creating a process so that we can support one another. So in that kind of my question, and what I would like to know is, you gave examples of advice that you would give for your teachers. Do you have any other advice that you'd give for any of the parents, any of the students, and how we can approach ensuring that we use this time, and that we use our creative minds, right? Because we are creative, and that we use that creativity to continue to bring us together so that we can continue doing what we need to do for our students.
You said the word grace, and I think that's it. We need to be gracious, and that includes to ourselves. We need to be okay with learning things. A lot of us are used to teaching, and we're not as used to learning. And I've spent a lot of time learning these last few months, and I was reminded by, wow, an entire 8-hour stretch of me learning entirely new things. I'm exhausted. This must be how my students feel every single day. And I think we need to be gracious. We need to be forgiving of ourselves and of our students in this process. We need to understand that not everything is going to be perfect,
right,
and not everything is going to be right, and that's okay. And I think that we need to start to have a paradigm shift, that we can't recreate what we've done before in a new environment and expect it to be equally successful.
Yeah.
And that's been hard for me. I'm really going to be honest, because I love being around my students. I love having the energy in the room. We have rehearsals and performances with 100 musicians, 200 musicians at a time. And so going from that to maybe I'll hear one of them at a time on a really good day, has been different. And so rather than trying to find a way to take what I've done before and make it successful, I think the better question to ask myself is, what can I do? What should I do? What must I do? And then how do I implement that? Rather than taking something and finding a new way to make it successful, take what's needed now. Because what I was doing before is probably what was needed before. And it might be the same thing now, or it might be something completely different. So what can I do now, and what should I do now, and how do I implement that? How do I make that successful? And so for me, it's been a different kind of connection with the students. It's been a different view on things like timelines and deadlines, and what is really important, and what do I want my students to get out of this experience? Not what do I want out of it, but what do I want to get out of it? And also I've taken a look at my own family. I have 2 young kids. And so I've been a little more gracious with myself on, it's okay for me to spend this time with my kids. And it's okay for me to spend this time by myself. And I shouldn't feel guilty about stepping away from work to do family stuff, or stepping away from family stuff to do work stuff, or stepping away from anything to just have a little bit of alone time. I'm learning to be a little bit more forgiving of myself. And I think that we could all do well to start to adopt that.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's the lesson, right?
He kind of said everything I wanted to say. I had some points, but he kind of hit them all.
Go for it, Haley.
It's the grace was my first point too, because I think that the teachers need to give the parents more grace. This is not their job. This is not their profession, and they don't know what we usually do. Okay. So I think that the teachers need to give the parents grace, but I also think the parents need to give the teachers grace. We're trying to give the same services, or as closely as possible as we were in the classroom, and we're trying, and we're trying to touch them every day. And so just as much as, now they're calling us, okay? So now the kids are at home, and now the parents are calling us, talk about, so what's that? That's how we feel when we call you. So let's just give each other grace in it, and let's work together on it, and let's have some true expectations of each other and the child when we start to look at it. So that was my first part. The second part was, man, now he took it all away. The second part was, okay, so he was talking about stepping away. Working at home, when you have to transition in such a quick pace, you overwork because you have to over prepare, because what you've prepared for before, like he said, is no longer working or is no longer serving you in the space that you're in. So we can tend to work a whole lot more just because we have to get certain things done. We have to have more meetings. We have to, instead of touching so many kids at one time, we have to end up touching them individually or in very small groups. So we tend to work more. So we have to make sure that we keep ourselves healthy and safe. We make sure we take care of ourselves. We have to do a reflection of our own minds. Where are we right now? You know, are we in a good space where we are? Because if we're not, then it's going to come across. It can come across on the other side. And we don't want to we're still a safe space. We're still a safe space. We may be at home and you may not see us, but we're still a safe space. We're still on that Zoom meeting. We're still one text away or one call away. Like, we have to still be able to get that. But to do that, we have to show up for ourselves. And we have to say, like he said, when it's time to step away, when it's time to spend time. I have a new fiance. When it's time to spend time with him, I can't keep working, you know? And so there are other things that I have to do. So it's really about balancing the time. Like he said, making sure you can walk away and making sure you can stay. So the parents and the students, we're not trying to make you do this, okay? This is something that they're asking us to do. We're trying to make a better future for you. No, we will not have all the answers. We do not. And we can't tell you tomorrow what's going to happen next week, because tomorrow it may change and next week it may be changing again. So right now, in the forever changing world, please understand that we can't explain everything, but we're going to try. But please ask questions. Ask the questions. Don't be silent about it. Don't be quiet about it. And I hope you do have, like he said, a person that you can come to, that you can speak to, that you can be open with, and so that you can really get your feelings out, or at least get some clarity, if that's all that's needed. My seniors call me all the time about graduation not happening, because some places it is and some places it isn't. But in our district, it's way too big to decide, oh, we're going to let one school and not the other school. That's going to be a bigger fight right there.
Right.
So, you know, we just have to be able to consider everybody. Right now, everybody is in this. Everybody has to deal with this. Everybody is making adjustments. So I do apologize for your graduating year not being the best, but we are trying. You have to take the effort that people are putting in to make virtual graduations happen, virtual drive-by graduation parties happen, you know, what your parents are putting forth. We understand how you feel. Just understand where we are, and please appreciate the effort being given.
I think there's a lot said in there, and you know, we could talk about this subject all day, and we're going to have you guys back, because I think this is so incredibly loaded. There's a lot of good information, and there's a lot of good information for everybody, not just the student, not just the parent, but talking about teachers. But I think there's a lot of community information and a lot of personal information and self-examination during this time as well. So I commend you both, and I commend all our teachers. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and I don't think there was ever a time right now. The time is right now to have a conversation about these things, because we have to also bear in mind it's a lot of things that your children were going through, or their teachers are going through, or their parents are going through, anything like that. Some of it was happening before COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
And now it's all being crammed into one spot. So I think I think the word grace, I think respect is needed. And I commend you both. I think, you know, I was going to ask what the biggest takeaways and the things to remember are, but you guys seem to cover them all. You know, it seems that they're covered. So, you know, the one thing that we always do on this show, and I did want to ask, because how can others serve you right now? I'm talking arts organizations, I'm talking, you know, just any kind of service organizations. What could the Dallas Opera do? What could DSO do? You know, what could the DMA do? Places like that. What could we do to help serve schools right now?
Okay, well, some schools we are creating, most districts or campuses are creating resource websites for the students, kind of like what Devlin said. So those, being able to put your curriculum out there, being able to make your curriculum available to the teachers for whatever curriculum you have, reading, math, science, whatever, music, orchestra, ensemble, make sure that you have your curriculum ready, make it available to the teachers, make it where it's self-explanatory for the teachers to be able to use in their classrooms. We're not meeting all the time. So when we are meeting, we're trying to make that meeting time as significant as possible in the child's day for the child's week. And so maybe if they're talking about a certain opera right now and they actually have some clips from the DTO or from the Opera House, make sure that we upload those clips. Make sure there's going to have something that the kids can go back and watch so they can have conversations about it. So I think that one thing is just making sure the resources that you have already created and that you already have is available to the teachers. And one of the ways that you can do that right now, everybody's what? Online, social media, being inside of the groups, the teacher groups on Facebook, the Twitter groups inside of the Twitter groups for the districts. Make sure that you're making your curriculum and things available to them, putting it out there, marketing it for them, and then putting surveys out there. What else would you like to see? Is there any topics you would like for us to cover? Are there any questions that you might want us to even cover on this show, right? So being able to be part of those groups and being in those groups, because you're not only marketing yourself, but you're also hearing all the things that the teachers are saying. You're also hearing all the things that the administrators say. You're also hearing all the things that the districts are updating on, so that you're just in the know as what they're in the know, so that you can know if you have another resource that may come available. Hey, we know it's a need. We hear it's a need. We're in the groups. We're standing in the room. Maybe not physically, but we're in the room figuratively, and and so that they can see that what you offer, that getting it to them. I think that's the biggest things, because like he said, teachers are creating resource packs for themselves right now to just try to get the information, because once we were using one or two websites, we've used the few resources we could. That website is no longer available. Now we have to go build other websites, or we have to go build other research content because we need more, because we're at home, and it has to be more visual. It does, because the kids, there are teachers learning, there are teachers teaching online, but it has to be visible, and you have to have some kind of content for a reteach at a later date, just in case. And it's something to engage with them. You need something to engage the students. So I just say, get out there, get the curriculum out there. Make sure that you ask them what they need, give them what you got, and keep up what's on the good, up to date for the district and the schools and the teachers at the time.
I love it. I think that's a call to action. Sounds like a call to action to me. Sound like a call to action to you, Devlin?
It does, yeah. And I'm definitely all about, we need to keep sharing and keep helping each other, because we're all doing this for the first time, or most of us are, and we're going to make mistakes. And so anything we can learn from someone else. I know for some of our virtual lessons, I reached out to other directors that I saw on, the Today Show, or that were featured on, news articles. I just emailed them, and they're like, absolutely, I'm happy to help. Let's do a web chat. Let's do a webinar, and we'll do a video on Friday, and we can talk through it. And so they've been incredibly helpful, and I've tried to pay that forward to other people. There's a number of companies that have made music resources available either free or made online access to them free. That's been incredibly helpful. Apple, which makes audio and video editing software, has some things like that. So that's wonderful. From a person-to-person perspective, what we said before, realizing that students have lost something that they won't quite get back, and realizing that they maybe need to be treated a little differently. Even a student who you're used to interacting with them a certain way, you may need to treat them a little differently based on what's going on in their life, because let's be honest, you need to be treated a little bit differently too. And so they're no different than that. And so I think just letting that, take the forefront, and pushing aside things like ego, pushing aside things like personal goals, pushing aside things like, mandates that don't have reasons. I think that we need to really have honest discussions about what's going to serve the students the best, and how we can do that in a very, very short amount of time, because most schools are wrapping up within the next week or 2 weeks. And so I think looking at how we can really serve them the best, and that goes everything from what are we going to recognize for graduation to how are we going to let them bring their textbooks back and still feel safe while they're doing it. I think we need to be creative, and we need to be compassionate when we're doing that.
That's great. So, we've gone longer than I thought we would, but, there's a lot to be said, but there's a lot to be said on this subject, and that's why we must have you back. I did want to, we finish every show with positive notes, and I've heard a lot of wonderful things here today, and a lot of very real things.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's a lot of people that don't want to talk about them, but in a situation that seems to be, it's daunting, in a lot of ways. But there's creativity to be had during this time as well. Quo talks about that all the time, that it's, there's time to also to be innovative in our thinking, and also trying to figure out ways to new ways to measure our successes,
right,
as opposed to what we were measuring before. There's a lot of talk about that in the Opera America educators forums and network, and there's a lot of talk about that among our counterparts at other opera companies right now, how we measure success. So Devlin, I'm very glad to hear you say that. I want to wrap up, but we never want to wrap up without talking about positive notes. And of course, we go to our resident optimist and fantastic co-host, Miss Quo Johnson. Quo, what are some of the positive things that we can take away today?
I am ever the optimist. It's annoying sometimes, I know, but I'm not giving up. Always optimism. We spoke about grace, but wanting to make sure that there is commitment, right? Because we're speaking with two educators who are committed to their students, but not just as students, but also as human beings. So in being mindful of our humanity and being mindful of the grace and being mindful of the fact that we're all in this for the first time, it's important that, again, when we commit, we do so in a way that provides us with accountability, but then that we acknowledge that there is support in what we're trying to do. So reach out to your other educators, reach out to other organizations, hold other organizations accountable, because we're here to assist in the best ways that we can. And then again, just have that grace. This is a space for healing. This is a space to reduce harm. Be sure to have those conversations, right? Remember again that the kids have lost things, students have lost things, adults have lost things. We've all lost some things. So we want to be mindful of what that looks like. And then we want to be mindful that we are creative, right? We are resilient, we are capable. So we have the ability to be able to respond to this in a way that'll bring us closer together, and in a way that'll truly provide us with an opportunity to serve our students the best way possible. So those are my positive notes.
Good man. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate Kristian and Devlin, the both of you, so much being here today. We appreciate you very much. I know it's not an easy time, but we appreciate your resilience. We appreciate your compassion, and just like Quo said, your commitment. And that goes for every teacher out there that has made this transition quickly and continues to serve in the classroom, and every parent that's trying to make the adjustment right now. We commend you. And we're here. The Dallas Opera is here to help as well. And I know many other organizations who feel the same way. So we will wrap up for today. We will have Kristian and Devlin back at some point. But I want to thank everybody out there for watching. Thank you, TDO, again, as always, for this platform. And we will see you the next time around.
All right, bye.